Have you ever thought about the word perseverance? It's easy to go along and do things according to your convictions when everything's going very well and very smoothly. But what about when it isn't? Our convictions are really proven the most when things don't always go the way that we expect. Who are we when things don't go according to our plans? Because the one thing that we do know is that God's plans are much different than ours, and He knows better. So if you're watching this podcast today and you've thought, wow, life hasn't gone exactly the way that I planned, what exactly is happening? This episode is for you today. And that's going to be our subject of this Audacious Faith Podcast. My guest today for the podcast is someone that I've known for quite a long time, probably about 27, 28 years. And one thing that I've noticed about her throughout all that time is she's been a model of consistency. Things haven't always been easy, but one thing that's been true all along the way is that she's been a definite person of faith, and that's been displayed not only in her own life, but through all the dealings that she's had with her family, church, everything, etc. So I'm very excited to be able to talk with her today, let her share some of her story. I think you're going to be blessed by it as well, and that's Traceys Bartholome. So thank you so much, Tracey, for being with us here today.
Happy to be here.
Awesome. So we're going to let people get a little bit acquainted with you. Why don't you kind of give us a little bit of your background, maybe a little bit of upbringing, how you came to faith, whatever you'd like to share with us.
Okay. So I was born in Florida. When I was about 6 months old, my mom moved us back to England because of flying roaches.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we were in England for about 4 years, and then we came to the United States because my aunt had MS. And my father was in the military. Interestingly enough, I don't remember living with my mom and my dad when they were married. But when I was 6 years old, my dad came back, my parents got divorced, and then my parents lived on the same street. So I was raised by both my mom and my dad, but they lived a block away from each other. I did not know anything about religion, and my family did not practice any form of religion at that time. And so my first thought about God was when my mom's aunt died. And when she died, it was like she was like my mom's mom because she took care of my mom the whole time my mom's family was working. And I went in, my mom was really upset. She died on Christmas Day. And I asked my mom, I said, Mom, what's wrong? What happened? And my mom told me that, her aunt died. And I said, well, what is that? And my mom said, it's when you fall asleep, but you can't wake up. Hence began my fear of sleep. At the age of 6. I was so afraid of sleeping. And I remember crying when you went to sleep every night, worrying about going to sleep every night, waking up and being, I made it, but now I'm going to have to go to sleep later. And so there's a big fear of sleep when I was that age. And then one day I go next door to visit my friend on a Sunday. And our parents were friends. My mom was friends with her mom, and we did a lot of stuff together. And one day they were coming out all dressed up on a Sunday morning. And so I said, where are you going? And my friend said to me, well, I'm going to church. And I said, well, what's that? And she said, we're going to go thank the person that made the world.
Okay.
And I said, okay, I want to go too. I want to meet this person who created the world. And my friend said, okay, come with us. So I went to this big Catholic church at the time, and I remember being really small and knowing that this man, he was a he, that he made the world, and he was in this church somewhere. And so I remember going up to every man in that building and saying, excuse me, are you God? No. Excuse me, are you God? No. I mean, I had no idea, what God was. And I remember going up to my friend after a while and saying, God's not here. I've asked every man in this building, and all of them said they're not God. And so then I began to go to her church, and I got to the point where I needed to take communion in order to go to heaven, is what I understood. But my family did not want me to do that. They didn't want me to go to the classes that were required. So I remember one day deciding that I needed to go to heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And if my mom and dad didn't want me to, I had to somehow take communion anyway. Okay. So I remember getting this line and getting in, and going forth and taking, the juice and the bread, and really thinking that was a human body, because I didn't understand anything about communion. And so then I remember feeling sick, really pukey sick, like I just done something really, really weird. And then I went home, and I had some nightmares about it, and then I began to talk to God and say, I don't think, I guess you exist, but I don't know where you are. And so I began to ask him to, number one, wake me up and not let me die in my sleep. And number two, show me who he was. And so after a while, my friends, they stopped going to that church, and a couple years pass, and I'm still talking to God in my prayers, but I don't know who he is, what the Bible is, none of that. And then one day, my mom, she would come home from work, and I'd meet her at the bus stop, and then we'd run home, and she'd change her clothes, and we'd run out and try to catch the movie. Well, one day, we run in the house, and we're about to run out and run to the movies. My mom didn't drive a car, so it was, we ran everywhere.
Okay.
And a guy was at the door with a Bible. And so my mom says to this guy, she just puts her hand up like this and says, "Don't say a word, and my daughter will go to church with you tomorrow." And I was mad at my mom, and I went to the movies with my mom, and the next day, a guy came knocking on the door. But I was too tired from going to the movies, the night before, so I didn't go with him. And then the next week he came again, and I got up in my pajamas, embarrassed, and told him I'm not coming. And the next week he came again. I got up in my pajamas, and I told him I'm not coming. And then the next week I thought, I better just get up and get dressed and go, because otherwise he'll never stop, and I won't ever get to sleep in.
Yeah.
He'll just keep waking me up. So I got dressed, and I went to church with this guy and his family, and I noticed right away that they were different from the atmosphere that I lived in. And I began to go to their church and learn about the Bible, and I wanted to be there whenever it was open. So Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, I was drinking it in. But my family wasn't so happy, that I was going to church so often. They called me a holy roller, and told me, that I was going to be crazy, like those crazy people. And so at one point, I'm going to this Bible club, and they're going over the rapture and Christ coming again.
Okay.
And I'm hearing that Christ is going to come, and he's going to take all the believers away, and everybody that wouldn't accept him when he was there will be left. And at this point, I have to go to the bathroom. So I get up out of the church, and I go to the bathroom. And I come back out, and I can't find anyone. And I don't know, there's like 100 kids. I can't hear anyone. I can't see anyone. And I'm running and running and running and running around this facility. I see the cars, but where are the people,
Okay.
So then I run back in the auditorium to the altar, and I fall down on my face, and I apologize to God for choosing to want to follow my family and not him. And I asked him, to come back. And I, told him that I was a sinner, that I knew that I needed Christ as my Savior, and that I wanted to belong in his family. And as soon as I prayed that, everybody came in the room. Now, where they were, I don't know. I told someone that, they said, "What are you doing on the floor?" I said, "I'm looking for an earring," I was, not wanting to admit what I did.
Right.
But that's how I came to know Christ, and I started following him at that point.
Interesting. So you just gave us all kinds of interesting information, and I'm going to review this to take it in. So first you're telling us, hold on, so your parents get divorced at an early age, but they live on the same street.
That's right.
That's unusual right there. So
Well,
they're just a few houses away?
Yeah, well, what happened was my mom, we moved, she bought a house, and then they were married. My mom, they sold their house from Florida, and then my mom bought another house for an investment property down the
Okay.
street. But then when they divorced, each one got one of those houses.
Oh, wow. So you just basically walk from one to the other?
That's right.
Pretty often, okay. And then I think the other thing that strikes me about you in what you're saying is the perfect illustration of childlike enthusiasm or faith or whatever, because everything that you were told, basically, you took at complete face value, including falling asleep, and now you were struggling with falling asleep thinking you're not going to wake up. I think we have to understand that when we tell children things, they take them literally. Yeah. You know, exactly. And then this curiosity about God that was put in there from an early age. So you had a sense of God then when you were approached with the idea, when the idea came to your mind. This was something that, was it that you could just sense that somebody had created all the things around you?
Well, the first thing that really caught me about the God of the Bible was his unconditional love. Mm-hmm. You got to understand, my parents were divorced. Mm-hmm. They did not love each other anymore.
Yeah.
And they were always fighting, right? Mm-hmm. And then, you know, they were going through a hard time. As a kid, I didn't realize that they were going through a hard time. All I knew was that both of them were in a bad temper a lot.
Yeah.
You know, so I had to walk on my tiptoes a lot. You mm-hmm. know, I had to do what they said. If I didn't do what they said, one person would yell at me, the other person would give me the silent treatment, right?
Yeah.
So it was a constant, you know, I have to do the right thing or they won't like me. They don't want to be around me. Whereas mm-hmm. here was this unconditional, loving God who not only wanted to be around me, but would be around me all the time, 24 mm-hmm. hours a day, and never leave me on my own. And it was very appealing.
So definite contrast
yeah.
to what you had been going through. All right, that's pretty awesome. So, so would you say, as you continued to grow up, was that the biggest challenge, or were there other challenges that came along as you went towards teens? And
well, I'm also handicapped. I have a bone disease.
Okay.
So my legs are, I don't say, some people will say deformed. Mm-hmm. I would say differently formed.
Okay.
That's what I would tell people. No,
sure.
they're not deformed. They're differently formed. Because of that, I was not a fast runner. I'm terrible mm-hmm. at sports. It's, you know, a lot of things that would cause kids to pick on you when you're mm-hmm. growing up. So I remember, like in second grade, that I was playing. We were playing, you know, teams, right? I don't remember if it was team ball or what it was, but what I do remember is that my very good friend who was on my team, when we lost, said, "It's not fair. It's not fair. We lost because Tracy's on our team." Mm-hmm. You know, it was my good friend who got all the kids saying, "We don't want her on our team. We don't want her mm-hmm. on our team," and I felt unwanted. Mm-hmm. And then. And so there was the problem with being different. I had a disease that, you know, very few people have, mm-hmm. And it just made you stick out like a sore thumb.
Sure.
I mean, just and then when I was in high school, you know, there was the fact that I was differently formed, mm-hmm. and then there was the fact that I guess. In the later part of elementary school, middle school, high school, I wanted both worlds. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be included in all the fun activities that all the people around me were doing.
Sure.
But at the same time, I wanted to follow God mm-hmm. and do everything that was in His Word.
Yeah. And those don't mix sometimes, right?
Right. And mm-hmm. so, you know, people didn't want to be around me. Oh, mm-hmm. We want to go drinking, mm-hmm. you know, and so I was getting excluded a lot. And I would say, you know, I remember one of my things was, would you want to go to a party? You know, if you bring me a 6-pack of Coke, I'll go with you. Mm-hmm. But then if somebody offered me a drink, then I would always say, well, you know, I don't have enough brain cells to lose like you do, you know, or I'd make up some sort of reasoning, you know, I can't get drunk, or I mm-hmm. can't do this or that. And I think because of that, I was excluded because I wasn't acting Christian enough that the kids that had Christian parents wanted their kids around me.
Okay.
And then I wasn't acting non-Christian enough that the non-Christian kids wanted me to be around them.
So you're kind of riding the fence, and therefore really had no real place that you were fitting in.
That's right. Yeah, I was isolating myself by doing that.
Now, these days, that would probably be more common as far as what a lot of teens growing up in church and everything tend to do now. But back then, I'm not trying to make you sound old, but we're in the same generation here. So back then, there was more of a clear-cut difference, would you say?
Oh, yeah. I mean, for instance, for a while, my mouth was really bad. So I swore like a sailor.
Sure.
So because that's what I heard. And so then I go to church, and of course, if you swear like a sailor in front of someone's parents, they don't want to invite you over to their house.
Right, bad influence.
So,
yeah.
So I mean, that was I would tell your audience, don't ever start swearing because it's a hard habit to break.
It is. So when you were doing that, I mean, was there a conviction, though, at the same time? Or you didn't really know any better?
There was a conviction. I remember one time I was working at Taco Bell, and one of the girls there came up to me and said, I heard the weirdest rumor about you. And I said, what? And they said, I heard you were a Christian.
Oh.
And I said, I am. What do you mean? I am a Christian, And this girl said, no way. No, from looking at you, I would never know. And I remember thinking, well, that's got to change,
And I've got to direct to the audience for a second and think to myself, if you're out there and you call yourself a person of faith, a person who follows Christ, what really could be more of a conflict than what you were just talking about? If you were to reveal that to someone else, for them to be almost in disbelief.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it was very, because at the same time that was happening, at my school, I was on the Christian club. I was very active on the Christian club.
Yeah.
And so I had basically, the me in front of the Christians and the me in front of the non-Christians. And that was, I regret it. And one time I really got convicted when I went to England with my class, and they were drinking. In England it's legal to drink at a younger age. And I didn't drink the whole trip, and I was trying to be a good witness the whole time I was there. But towards the end, I had gotten into a fight with my dad right before I left, so I used to always say, I won't waste any of my money on liquor. So then someone else said, well, I'll waste my money to see you get drunk. And I thought, well, I'm in another country. I'm just with this small group of people.
Nobody's going to know.
Nobody will know what happened to me. And so then I went back home, and I'm walking. I got changed in my English class. I'm going to a new class, and I'm hearing these people say, hey, do you know Tracey so-and-so, the Christian girl from the Christian club, got drunk in England? I'm hearing, and I go to this new class, and no one knows me, and I'm sitting in the back, and I'm hearing these people talk about me. And then I got the joy of the teacher saying, now introduce yourself to the class.
Oh, wow.
And I got to say, that's me.
You just wanted to bury yourself in
I wanted to hide. Yeah, I wanted to hide. And I knew that, and when I did get drunk, I didn't enjoy it, because I knew that I was in disobedience. So the whole time I was thinking, I'm making a huge mistake. And yet I went all the way through the process. And I wasn't any fun, because when people would talk to me, I say, well, I just made a huge mistake. This is a major sin for me to go up against what God wants for me and to choose to do this. And so I didn't enjoy the thing, and I remember I wanted a really bad headache or something, but not, Lord
Hardly
gave me perfect
happened.
health.
Yeah.
And I was just like, but what really hurt the most was that what I did ruined, really ruined my reputation in a lot of ways, and it made me decide that I needed to be more committed.
So do you think from that experience, because this is where I've seen with a lot of people, where they may see someone who has beliefs, like you said you had beliefs, and they don't necessarily agree with those beliefs, but there's a test there where they want to see how real they are.
Right.
And so was it almost like, here someone comes along saying, hey, I'll pay the money for you to do this. This is almost like they want to somehow see that it's not real?
Yeah, I mean, they were offering that so that we could have fun together.
Mm-hmm.
Now they wanted to see me, fall, and so I let them,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, I felt bad about it. Although I don't think that when we make a mistake as Christians, we are going to. Sometimes my husband always says, because I'll say, oh, so-and-so, look what he did. And my husband will say, we're all sinners. It's more amazing that someone doesn't sin
Right.
than it is when someone does, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet, when people sin, then the important thing is that we get back up,
Mm-hmm.
and get back on the walk.
Sure. So this mistake, it didn't become a habit thing for you.
No.
And you actually learned from it, realizing you didn't want to go that way.
Well, yeah, because the most important thing to me was to let other people know about the hope that Jesus has. And I knew that I had just wrecked years of, I would say I was trying to follow the Lord for at least a year and a half at that point.
Okay.
And I had just wrecked, a lot of my witness.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I didn't want to ever do that again.
There you go. So you learned from it. That's good. You mentioned your husband. So you met Dwight. How long have you been married now?
We've been married 28 years.
Okay.
And we dated 4 years before that.
Got it. And you have 3 children, correct?
Right. Yeah, actually, I don't have any children. I have 2 adults and 1 teenager.
Got it. But they're always your kids to a sense, aren't
Yeah,
they?
they are.
Got it. Okay. And now you mentioned some of the challenges that you had health-wise, the bone disease and everything. So you've had to deal with that with your family as well. Some of that ended up being situations that you've had health things that they've had to go through, right? You want to share a little bit about those challenges?
Sure. So the disease that I have is really rare. So when I was younger, no one knew anything about it. Now with the internet, a lot more is known. So I have 3 boys, and all 3 of them inherited the disease that I have, which is very rare. So that just the chances that all 3 of them would get it is rare. And then apparently you're not supposed to marry tall people. My husband is 6'7".
Yeah.
So because I married someone very tall, like for me, I don't know exactly how many, but I probably have about 30 little tiny extra bones.
Okay.
But they're tiny. Whereas my sons are big because they're always growing. So for me, I stopped growing around age 16, but my kids are constantly growing. They're all 6 feet and over now.
Right.
So all 3 of them got it. My first son, when he got it, he was like maybe 14 months. He woke up one morning and it looked like his finger was broken. But that was traumatic because it was flu season. We were all sick.
Yeah.
And then he wakes up with a broken finger, and he's yelling, and so I go to the doctor, and the doctor wasn't mine because mine was already gone for Christmas. And this guy, he thought that I was negligent and that I had let my son break his finger and healed wrong. And so he actually was going to report me to Child Protective Services. And then the Lord shows up in that when I go to get my referral to take my son in, I walk into this room and there's a doctor, an older doctor there, and he said to me, your last name is Bartholome. Did it used to be Hall? And I said, yes, it did. How did you know that? And he said, you were my very first surgery that I ever did. So 15 years before that, when I was 15 years old, he operated on me. And so he knew what was wrong with me. In addition, he knew what was wrong with this rare disease that my son had. And so he was very upset over the doctor threatening me, and he fixed everything for me, and then he retired shortly thereafter. But I can't help but wonder, the doctor that operated on me, that was in San Diego, in a naval hospital, and then I ran into him in Pasadena, and then he does retire, a few months later. So this, the Lord showing me that, I'm not fearing that your son will get this disease, but I'm showing you that I'm around.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. That's incredible. So it's the timing of it and everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even the location, that's... So you mentioned with the legs and stuff, so did you get other areas for you, or this just was more for them?
Well, for me, I do have legs and arms. I have my fingers. But because I didn't have good medical care, I don't know. A lot of the advances now with MRIs, it's a lot easier to get things like that. So I don't know. Oh, I do have one by my lung. I have a nice big one that's there. And, but only to the point where most of the time it was just because it made me look different and I didn't like it, and it made it hard to walk long. However, eventually I had one tumor in one leg and one tumor in the other leg, and they grew like that, so you couldn't, they couldn't cross. And
Yeah.
At that point, they took those out, and
Okay.
it was kind of funny. They took them out. I had a thing on both of my legs, and a couple of people in my school, the rumor went out that I got hit by a train. But there's actually no trains in the city that I grew up in, so it was kind of funny that they
Hit
came
by
up
a
with
train,
it.
but they have no idea of where.
Yeah, it's
right?
not like now where we have trolleys everywhere, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so for me it was more that it was actually the way other people responded to it was more of a problem than the disease itself.
Okay.
But for my boys, it's a different story. They all got a really severe case of it, and it causes them pain, a lot of pain,
Yeah.
almost daily.
Is there a point, so is this a lifetime thing, or is there a point where it slows down or stops?
Right. When you finish growing, then the tumor stopped growing.
Okay.
And then you just have to live with whatever damage was done. So
Got it.
for boys, that's age 24, and then of course if you're like my oldest son, he's 6'6" now, and he's got one more year to go.
Okay.
And my middle son's 19, so he has 3 more years to go, and my youngest son is 15, so he's got 9 more years to go.
Yeah.
So it's
almost like they want to stop growing, but it doesn't work that way, huh?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So that's been challenges, a lot of doctors, a lot of surgeries, a lot of different things that they've had to go through. So how do you, some people would get really discouraged with that. And I'm sure there's times where it's very difficult. So how do you keep the perspective of faith when you're having to deal with things that everyone has their stuff, obviously, but this is something that a lot of people don't deal with, and it's something that there's really not much you can do about it. So has there been certain lessons that you've really learned through this time?
There is. There's the world. I remember one person telling me, well, you can cry it out. So cry your eyes out. I don't know if anyone's ever tried that, but one time I had 3 kids that were one couldn't walk, one had a serious problem with the arm, one had a leg infection, almost lost a leg, and it was too much. I can tell you that I can have 2 kids have a problem, but when the third one starts to have one, I'll probably have a panic attack of some physical thing will show up.
Yeah.
And I thought, in particular, there was a chance that one of my sons wouldn't be able to walk anymore. And I started to, I was overwhelmed. So I thought, okay, fine. I'll cry it out. I keep hearing, cry your eyes out, fine.
Yeah.
But, all you'll do is get bloodshot eyes.
Yeah.
You can cry for hours, you'll just bloodshot your eyes, and then they'll sting for weeks. And but what I found is that there is a small blessing hiding somewhere, and it's my job to find it, not just for me, but for them. So and the Lord has shown me, like one time my son John, he had just had surgery. Actually, we'd gone in on a Wednesday for a back doctor or something, and we were going to be going on Friday for surgery. And we went to the Wednesday one, a doctor said, for the spinal cord, well, we can wait, we can put the surgery off. And I'm like, okay, what, 2-3 months? And the doctor said, 2-3 days.
Yeah.
And I thought he was joking. I'm like, and he's like, no, you really can't wait. And and so then I remember going to get an X-ray with my son, and we were both kind of distraught. In fact, I almost threw up in the trash can. Because, I mean, when you hear bad news, that's, you get a physical response.
Sure.
And I went to get the x-ray, and there was another kid there, and I heard my son say to the other kid, I can't believe I have to have another surgery. And the other kid said, me either. Now, my son at this point had probably had 13 surgeries. And my son said to the other kid, well, how many have you had? And this kid said, 42. And my son looked at me, and we both shut up, because, how could we complain about 13?
Right.
And then another time where my son Matt was having surgery, he was 4 years old, and this was his second surgery. And a lady, and I said, oh, my poor son, he's had to have so many surgeries. And her son was also 4. And she said, mine too. I just don't know how he can deal with it. And I said, well, how many has your son had? And it was 16.
Wow.
So the Lord showed me, I just need to be grateful for what we have.
So it's always about perspective then. We see things as very big, but then God shows us other things, and we realize, wait a minute, there's others that are also going through stuff as well. And it's amazing kind of how that timing shows up to show us those things, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. The Lord has shown me, that there's I can't say that, scripturally, a verse that, encourages us will show up at the right time that we need it. Or, I remember earlier this year when my son had operation on his lung, and they never said that they would take out a rib bone. They never even heard that was even going to be a complication. And so we got called in the middle of the surgery saying that there was a complication, they couldn't get the tumor out, and that they would take out a rib bone. This son of mine this is my other son, really cares about what he looks like, and hates the fact that he's handicapped.
Okay.
And I knew that I was going to have to tell him that his rib bone was missing, which would mean that your body would slink in a little bit,
Okay.
And I was distraught, and I'm walking outside the hospital building after hearing this bad news, trying to figure out how I'm going to tell my son when he wakes up that he's missing a rib. And it was overwhelming. And so I, again told the Lord, I can't handle this. You have to take this for me. In addition, could you get me out of this mood that I'm in? I'm in a terrible mood. I need a distraction. I cannot be crying when I walk in there. And right then, first of all, it started raining as I was talking to him. And then all of a sudden, and I'm not lying, a mouse ran from out of a bush across in front of my feet, open-toed shoes, into a hole in the wall.
That'll change your state real quick, right?
And I screamed.
Okay.
And then I started to laugh because I knew that was the distraction that I had prayed for, because now I was totally distracted. And
Got to watch what you pray for sometimes, huh?
Yeah.
That's not what you thought would happen, but he knew how to change it quick.
Absolutely. So the Lord's always provided the people that I need, the phone call that someone shares, He's always provided whatever I needed when I need it.
Wow, we're going to be looking for mice now. That's interesting how God shows up in various ways. So you ended up doing, I know with your kids you've done homeschooling. Has that been due to their medical situations, or maybe it wasn't originally, but has that helped in this with all the different procedures you've had to do?
Yeah. I just originally chose to do homeschooling because I gave my kids the bone issue, but my husband gave them the speech therapy. My kids all had trouble speaking.
Okay.
Part of it is when you're growing, your body is growing so big that it just wants to grow big, and it doesn't take a lot of effort on the smaller muscles. So that's very expensive, and the school district was not offering a lot. In fact, really it was pitiful. They wanted half an hour a week in a group of 10, half the time in Spanish. And I was told my son needs excessive speech therapy. In addition, because I was told originally that when he went into kindergarten I would get it, when I went into kindergarten I heard, well, he's been speaking wrong for 4 years. It'll probably take 7 years for him to learn to speak properly.
Okay.
So we charged it as long as we could. And then I heard that there was a virtual school that offered speech therapy, and right away they offered me 3 hours a week.
That's better.
And I got to choose where we wanted to go.
Okay.
And so that was, so that's originally why I went into it, due to money. And I was scared. I'm not a good student. And then along with that school, we've added classes and we've modified it to our lifestyle. And because my kids are homeschooled, we can take doctor's appointments at any time, physical
Sure.
therapy at any time. All those things are not affected.
So it's almost like God kind of knew that and worked all that in. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult in regular situation of school to then miss all of that school
Right.
due to procedures.
Also, even the pain issue, because when you're in chronic pain, you may lose the first 4 hours of the day, or you might wake up from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. and be in pain.
Okay.
So the wonderful thing about homeschooling is you do school when you feel like it. So if you're not feeling like it, then we can put it off. When you feel like it, then we can do it. And so for anyone that's in pain, I recommend, but also before, when my son was going to school, he'd go to school for most of the day, then he had homework, and and then we had therapy, and there was no time to play. So the wonderful thing about homeschool is there's no homework.
Yeah.
So you automatically get free time by doing that. And also, I missed my son because he was gone all the time. And through homeschooling, I was able to do everything with him and with all three of
So
them.
would you say, because there's always pluses and minuses, so those are some of the biggest benefits, the flexibility, the more freed up time, the family connection?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are looking at this right now, especially with everything going on in the crazy world that we're living in.
Oh, the family element is a big one because, for instance, we go on a lot of field trips. We probably go on one field trip a week all year long. And if you go on if you go on an educational trip, it's so much cheaper. A lot of places it's $25 to go in. If you're a family, it's $6 to go in if you're an educational field trip.
Right.
So we've been able to go places that we never could have afforded to go.
So this is connected with other people that are also doing the same thing, right?
That's correct. There's huge networks of homeschool people.
That's what I think a lot of people don't realize. They think homeschool, that just means you kept your kids home and now you're going to teach them everything. They don't realize the resources that are in place, that you can still connect and network with other families that are doing the same thing.
Right, and homeschool is more like, I think it's more like real life because when we're working, we work one-on-one. But when we're playing, we play in a group.
Okay.
So, as an adult, right, you go to work in an office, you're working by yourself. But then, you get to go out and have fun or you get to go to lunch with other people, right?
Right.
And, so I think it's more suited to what people normally do. And also you're with multiple ages, whereas in school you're just with one age group. And so, yeah, I think it works out really well. And that is important in that you do join homeschool groups and you don't, the first couple of years was kind of hard because we had a lot of medical issues. And besides that, we had a hard time finding a homeschool group in our area. I think now with the internet, it's really easy to find.
Connectivity
groups.
is so much better, right? So what are those, there seems like there's a lot of positives. Were there some negatives?
Well, the negatives would be, and I don't know that it would be any worse than if you're in school. For instance, if you don't like studying, if you're in school, you don't like studying, you're at home, you don't like studying, you're going to fall behind.
Okay.
The difference would be, well, that's what we figured out is if you're in school, you might finish the year with a D.
Okay.
But if you're doing it at home, you finish it. You completely finish it. That means that you have 3 weeks less of summer. You have 3 weeks less of summer. So you actually work at your pace. In the same way, if you don't want to do as much homework, like there's been times where my son's hands have hurt so much that he can't write. So, less writing. I can choose what to do. So it really is just. Some things are just like school in that it's what you schedule it as. If you schedule it to be very rigid and strict, it's very rigid and strict. If you decide you want, I was just telling someone today was park day. This Thursday is our sunshine day. We spend the entire day doing PE at the park.
Okay.
And someone is asking me about my schedule, and I said, I don't do time schedule. I do subject. So, we have English, we have math, and we just go down. So I don't say, well, you have to finish from 8 to 8:30, because what if my son wakes up and he's tired and he wants to sleep till 8:30?
Okay.
So I say, okay, after you have breakfast, you're doing this. And so,
So it's more of, I guess that is more like real life, because it's more of, look, these are the tasks that have to get done.
that's right.
So you can either do it in a shorter period of time, or it can take all day.
That's right.
But you're not going to do the other things you want to do until you take care of your responsibilities.
Right.
Got it. Well, that does sound more like real life in many ways. So one of the things that I've noticed about you over the course of time is that you, despite these challenges, these surgeries, these different things, and even in some of the situations of ministry that you've been in that are not always smooth, I mean, there's lots of stuff going on, uncertainties, you seem to really stay the course. You don't seem to be, a lot of people are very flaky. They're just kind of like, I'm here and then I'm not, okay, I'm committed, now I'm not. They're just very easily swayed. You don't seem to be that way. Is there part of your upbringing, or why do you think God's made you like that?
Well, for loyalty, I think that growing up, it was really hard to find somebody who was reliable. A lot of my friends, would like me when they're in front of me, but if I'm not there, that I'm the nerd, or I would think someone was your friend and they're not. And then my mom was very busy working, so a lot of times she couldn't be there, and I grew up in the 70s, where in the 80s, so parents were busy, and I remember one time my class had a function and my mom didn't come, and I waited for my mom to show up, and I know she tried her best to get there, but it didn't change the fact that she wasn't there. So that's why I chose to be a stay-at-home mom, because
Okay.
I did not want, I wanted, if my kids needed me, I wanted to be there. Two, I guess it really does bother me when people drop out. For my generation, my particular class, living together, not getting married, is I have one friend who lived with her boyfriend for 17 years, had 2 kids, but never could make the commitment to get married. And eventually,
Yeah.
after 17 years, said, okay, yeah, both of them, I'm not sure if this is the right person for me. 17 years later, they said, you weren't. Well, and so that kind of wishy-washiness, I don't think it's good for our society. And so, like, when I dated my husband, it took him 4 years to convince me to get married, because I didn't believe in divorce. And so to me, I wasn't going to get married, because I didn't think I could actually live with anyone and not get divorced. So let's just stay single. But once I made that decision, that meant that, I was going to keep it. And so, yeah, I just tend to think I'm committed for the good of whatever I think God wants me to do. I'm not going to drop out.
Being a person of your word, so a lot of people will be in the upbringing that you came through, and what you were just mentioning. A lot of people just end up being the same way. But then there are some like yourself that make a decision to be what was not there.
Right.
So that was the reaction that you took to it. You didn't want that. You didn't want what you experienced. You didn't want that for your family. You didn't want that for your kids. You
Right.
didn't want any of those things.
I think what was devastating was that my family was very busy. My mom, worked all the time and had her friends, and then my dad worked all the time. He had 2 jobs. And so I was very, very dependent upon my friends, who, I'm not saying all of them were wishy-washy, but there were quite a few that were not there. And when I graduated from high school, I was really in shock that not one of them hung out with me after we graduated. That was it.
Okay.
And then I realized that I had put all my all my cards in the basket of friends, and they weren't actually reliable, you know.
Yeah. That could be a very sad reality that you get hit with, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're in a stage. 2 of your boys now are on the older stage. Pretty soon, hopefully, they're going to be done growing.
Right.
And plus, some of the homeschooling responsibilities are now lessened,
Right.
right? So you're going to enter, I don't mean to make this sound weird, but in some ways, a different stage of life.
I call it the unknown zone.
The unknown zone. Okay, I like that. I like that. It's unknown to us. It's not unknown to God. So do you get any sense of, I'm not sure if you do or not, is there any sense of what God is saying maybe is next?
Well, I mean, originally I wanted to be a missionary a long time ago, and the Lord, you know, I tried really hard to go to school for that, but just my father was sick at that time with cancer and it didn't work out. And then I married my husband, and he actually worked for a radio program with the Bible, which went all over the world. So the Lord gave me my wish to reach the nations, to reach another nation. I wanted to go to India, but but that program is in India, you know. And then I was able to do foreign exchange students. I stopped last count was 42 foreign exchange students.
You had 42 different foreign exchange students that lived in your homes.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
But as my kids were getting older and older, it was getting harder and harder to keep the house clean, you know, all the time for the students. So and also the physical stuff started happening. In addition, my health has kind of gone down a little bit. So the Lord did, allow me to go into the world, sort of. Not what I was planning on, and I don't have the health to, live in the middle of nowhere, right?
Right.
I need a doctor, and a pharmacy.
Okay.
And so now the Lord has brought me into the realm of having children that have medical issues, and also having a chronic disease, and living with one. And so I find that I'm ministering to children that have, medical issues, parents that have children with medical issues, or people that have medical issues. I don't know. I don't know exactly what the Lord will bring in next. I might go into helping foster kids. I've always been interested in kids that didn't have direction.
Okay.
And I call it the unknown zone. I really don't know what God has next.
But there is that trust that He knows.
Yeah, and I've been focusing in on something that I didn't realize that I was doing wrong, and that is, in Joshua, it talks about, studying the word day and night. And I was only studying it once a day.
Right.
And so I
Get
kind
a little dose like a vitamin in the morning,
so
right?
so I thought, I'm asking you, God, to tell me what door, where's my occupation, and you're saying back to me, well, I just asked you to do this simple thing, and you haven't figured that one out yet. So So right now I'm just focusing in on trying to, to be more disciplined, and talking to Him day and night, and reading His Word day and night.
Okay.
And
Well, there is that sense, don't you think, that a lot of times we're trying to find that great unknown out there, and in reality, it's right where God puts us.
yes.
He just keeps putting us in this situation, saying, just do it right here. Just serve me exactly where I have you, and I'll keep putting you in the right places.
Right, and the Lord's always bringing, someone who needs help, or something that needs to be done, so I think that a lot of us, we grew up thinking we could be president of the United States, but but God isn't calling us to that role, but rather to minister to the normal people, you know, and that's where I remember somebody telling me, well, what if you went to, because when I was going to Bible college, I had 2 jobs to try to pay for it.
Right.
And I was working so hard, getting hardly any sleep. And I remember someone saying, well, what if God had you go all the way through Bible college, and then you became an Avon lady? And I said, well, surely God would tell me I was going to be an Avon lady before He made me go through and pay all this money to go through Bible college, right? Surely He would tell me. But actually, the Avon ladies that I've met, and the unschooled people that I've met, are a lot of times way wiser than, and have been more influential in my life and in others' lives. So, yeah.
Awesome perspective. So, I wanted to ask you a couple more questions. So through these ups and downs of life, are there like one or two lessons that stand out to you?
I suppose the first one would be that God is going to do something in my life. It's probably not what I'm planning, but it will be better. I mean, I really tried hard to be single, to be a single missionary, to not have any. And when I met my husband, I really fought him off, for 4 years, like, forget it.
Yeah.
And yet when I finally was willing to say, okay, I believe the Lord is opening this door and wanting me to walk through it. And I remember being terrified of making that commitment, lifetime commitment. All of a sudden it was like, oh, I did what God wanted. I have the joy. I have the peace that He provides. And the Lord opened the doors that, whereas when I was stuck there rejecting Him changing my plan, the doors were all shut around me.
Sure.
And so it's going to be different from what I think, and I need to be open to possibilities that I think I can't do.
Okay. So and that's a continual. Obviously, it's that way all through the rest of our life, right?
Yeah.
All right. So there's a person out there listening to this right now. We don't know who's going to listen, and it'll be up there for a while. And they may be thinking to themselves, "Life's crazy. I don't see purpose." What would you tell them? What would God have you tell them right now to find purpose in the mayhem?
Well, life is crazy, and it seems crazier now, but actually it's been crazy for thousands of years. And the purpose is right where you are. However, unless you submit to God and try to know Him, you won't know what that purpose is.
Right.
So once you do the very basics that He's asking, accept Christ as Savior, come close to Him, reading His Word, which is His instruction, how He talks to you. If you don't read His Word, then you have no idea what He wants. And then the Lord will show you as you talk to Him. And being in the church, I'm amazed at the amount of believers I meet who are like, well, I haven't been to church for 5 years because I got hurt in church. And it's like, well, I got bad service at the grocery store, but I went back.
Because you needed food.
That's right.
Right.
And we need spiritual food.
Yeah.
So God's plan on this earth is to use the church. We need one another, and life will be too much if we isolate ourselves. But I mean, the church is to bear one another's burdens. So if you're not going to church, you're bearing too many burdens. You're not. And the way that I look at it is, the church is to bear one another's burdens. We may not be able to bear our own burdens. We need other people to carry the load. But that doesn't mean we can't. It's sort of like, it's easier for me to clean someone else's house than to clean my own, right? It's easier to help someone else than it is to help yourself. And God's plan for us is through the church. God's plan to change the world and make things better is through the church. So if you said, I'm not ever going back into church, then you've basically said, I'm not willing to find the purpose that God has for me.
There you go. Well, I appreciate you taking the time today and sharing with us some things about your life, being grilled on a bunch of questions, being put on the spot. And I know that it'll be a blessing to those that are out there and are listening as well. We encourage you to reach out if you have any questions or any type of encouragement that you need. You can reach out and we'll be sure to connect, and I can connect your question to Tracey as well if you have one specifically for her. If you have not subscribed yet to the podcast, we encourage you to do that so you don't miss any episodes, and we just hope that you'll be blessed and continue to see the Lord's leading in your life. And if you need some spiritual counsel and help, definitely reach out. Don't do this alone. There are answers there, and God wants and is waiting for you to take that step in His direction. So this has been the Audacious Faith Podcast. God bless you. See you next time.